Stories of men who've seen a motherland they've dared to leave, a dream on the horizon to chase. A mother's hands that carefully weave a new life from her make-believe, a city with a hope and warm embrace. Island to Liverpool, generations hand in hand across the sea. Home's where the heart is, beating strong for all to hear. Welcome as we bring language, dance and songs to sing, to celebrate a fondness of our past. The future is for us to hold and cherish all the stories told, each chapter penned a longing to surpass. Island to Liverpool, generations hand in hand across the sea. Home's where the heart is, beating strong for all to hear. To Liverpool, generations hand in hand across the sea. Home's where the heart is, beating strong for all to hear. Island to Liverpool, generations hand in hand across the sea. Home's where the heart is, beating strong for all to hear.
And welcome to Hold the Sausage, our screener and maker exchange event. I'm Emma Smith, Artistic Director and CEO of Liverpool Irish Festival, and I'm delighted to introduce you to our three panellists today. Mick Hannigan, founder and director of IndieCork, Cal Freeman, director and amazing creative, and Chloe Muldoon, who is an actor in one of Cal's projects and creative of her own as well. Hello and welcome to you all. So the process that we're going to go through today is we're going to show you Cal's film, and then after that we're going to come back for an interview between our three panellists. Then I will duck in at the end and we'll check in with each other and say good night after that. So Cal, is there anything that you would like to say about your film in introduction?
Only that I hope people laugh and enjoy it.
Well, I did laugh, Cal. I laughed at the film. I certainly laughed at Chloe. Well done to you both. Um, what intrigues me is the origins of the film, Cal. It has a feel that you used your nanny's living room or kitchen to make the film, because there's a great sense in Hold. What were the origins of the film, Cal?
You were cutting in and out there, but I got the end of the question, which was, what are the origins of the film? So essentially, the origins of the film kind of came from a place of representing home, representing what I know and class as home. And you mentioned sort of it felt like it was born out of my granny's living room. So it wouldn't be a direct take on my granny's living room. And perhaps it's a conversation I would imagine would go down if I were to have that conversation with my granny. But really, it's just a representation of home, like I said, in terms of the feel, the humour, sort of the way that we use comedy to discuss complex and at times hard topics. And it was very much just about representing what feels to me more like a modern take on, possibly rural Irish homes, ones that I'm accustomed to, ones that Chloe will also be accustomed to, which really helped with obviously her being in the film. And I feel like at times in the north of Ireland slash Northern Ireland, as a Catholic person, sometimes media isn't necessarily accurate or doesn't feel like it's always drawing or painting us in a positive light. So, kind of with that, and sort of know myself as a gay person, I kind of wanted to write into the story something that felt representative of not only aspects of my own life, but things of my home life and how I was raised and how my friends and family at home, which I have a lot of love for. I love being Irish. I'm very proud to be Irish and from Ireland, which runs through this film. And I just wanted to write something that actually during a hard time of lockdown, which is when I wrote the script, something that was lighthearted and fun and airy, but still had important and relevant messages, and also represented basically a modern Ireland in my eyes, through my eyes, in a way, and also specifically North, because that's who I am and where I'm from.
And the production, you say that it was written during COVID. I'm wondering, when you were writing it, did you plan for Chloe or for one actress to play all the parts, or was that something that that COVID and all the restrictions presented us? That was it a way of overcoming the problem of having a troupe of actors, or did you always intend it to be one actor playing a variety of roles for comic effect?
Yeah, so the decision to actually have Chloe play all four characters was a pre-production decision. It did feel quite last minute. I think we were 2 or 3 weeks away from actually our shoot day, which had been rearranged so that couldn't be moved. And yeah, so to answer your question, sorry, it wasn't wrote in at the start. It was very much a pre-production stage decision. And it kind of came from a place that it's a totally Irish script. It's meant to be Irish within its heart of it. It's about representation. And when it came to casting, I watched a few videos of non-Irish people, essentially, and it just didn't feel necessarily right. And I know my job as a director in any film is to translate characters for each actor for them to take that on. I know that's part of the struggle, artistic excellence. But with the budget that we had, the time limits that we had, I mean, it's always been a dream for me and Chloe to work together. I'm the film person, she does drama. We've been friends for a very long time. So the idea of doing a project together was like great. And when I rang Chloe, I was like, listen, this is a film, you know a bit about it. How do you feel about playing everyone? She was like, yes, I was waiting for you to ask me, essentially. Obviously, there were so many advantages with that. Chloe's from where I'm from. She knows these characters. She knows the mannerisms. She knows who these people are. That was half my job done, in a way. Obviously, we spent the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to the shoot, finessing certain lines, getting proper inflections, highs and lows of characters, deciding who the characters are as individuals, as well as how they communicate with each other over their Sunday dinner. Now that's where Chloe's expertise really came in handy. She was mentioning things to me that I would never even think about in terms of, well, what's the mum going to be doing at the table? Is she going to be eating some bread? Is the little sister going to be playing with her potatoes? Things like that I didn't really think about. She was able to bring forward, and that's where drama and stage theatre melted really well with my film experience, I would say. And that just added so much more value. Of course, it helped with COVID restrictions and stuff like that. We had one character. So where I was ticking off these boxes and I was like, this is, this us all lines up, this is great. On the other side of it, I had to make a decision because I was like, that means Chloe has got a lot of work to do. And it also means we have a camera for a day that has to shoot one person doing 4 individuals. And we still have to make it look like these 4 individuals are talking to each other at all times. So that was the risk of going to that decision. But deep down, at that fork road in production, it felt like the right decision to do. And I feel like it really paid off. So that's kind of where that came about.
Well, my view as a viewer is that it totally paid off, because it added a whole other layer of humor. We could enjoy Chloe in her different incarnations, and perhaps like Stones in His Pocket, which had characters playing or actors playing multiple roles. It added to the humor, and one could appreciate that. So I thought, intentional or brought about by circumstances, genius. Chloe, I've no doubt it was a challenge, but as Cal suggested, you knew each of these characters incredibly well.
Yes, definitely. I think a lot of our own personal friendship and humor actually comes from honestly being these characters on a day-to-day. So I have become my mum, and Cal immediately becomes his mum, and you tit and tat, and that's basically how it is. So definitely calling me up like just as a friend in terms of how is this going to go, I'm nervous about it, I don't know how. I'm now, because when you come from Ireland to England, you become an English-based creative, so you kind of want to mold the two together. So sitting as, I am an English-based creative, but I do want to really stick to my roots, and I have this platform, and I would just love to use this English platform to kind of, hats off, and a bit of an ode to home. And I think that definitely stems from, I think, the underrepresentation of Irish art, I think, in England right now, which is why Liverpool Irish Festival just absolutely is a cocoon for just everything, and then there's webs going out to everyone, and yeah, I just think that when he did come to me with the initial idea, I think from a drama point of view, and focusing so much on naturalism on stage and things, immediately I was just thinking, are you really going to where are you going to get a 40-year-old mum with a North of Ireland accent to play this, and a granny, and trying to also, it was kind of down to the little logistical things, and it started to become a lot less fun. And I just think you have 5 minutes to really portray something that you want to be lighthearted and fun. You have 3 weeks also, let's not make this stressful. And immediately it was, I'll play Saoirse and we'll try and make it from there. And then it became, I'll just play Eilish. And then it became, look, it's clear, I can do them all. And then it was the next day that Cal said, remember that thing you were saying about playing them all? Do you want to kind of put this into fruition? So it just kind of made sense. And through the pandemic, I couldn't wait to get back to acting. And immediately there was little chopping changes to the script. Sort of things that we were saying off screen actually became like maybe into the script a little bit. And things that played around on the day. Some things you couldn't even predict as well. We knew it was going to be a challenge. We had rehearsals. We did the whole run through of me going and changing and doing everything in one character, and then doing everything as the second character. When you're in that space and you're given one day and you're dealing with so many props and trying to really characterize, there's some things you just can't prepare for. So definitely it was so much easier than what it would have been. Then Cal didn't have to focus on, have you got the accent right? Because if the accent's not right, it's not going to work. So it was literally, rather than Cal having to go over to someone being like, it's now. So trying to like really get that became not important, and it was all down to the mannerisms, and let's just make this funny, and let's have all of our family watch it and laugh and beyond. So
Definitely.
yeah.
And just to add literally one sentence to that, which is, when I wrote the script, I was putting in lines of comedy that were funny because of how I was saying them, and I could hear my family members, Irish people I know, saying them. So then when I thought about them being said incorrectly or not being carried correctly, it was no longer funny. And then I was like, oh God, I've lost the whole core of this film, which is like the humour. So if I haven't got that, I haven't got hold of the sausage. So it had to be done right, you know what I mean? So that was also another massive driving force, I would say.
Carl, you mentioned at the beginning that there was a strong sense of home and the familiar. And I think that's commendable. But then you meld in the unfamiliar in the sense of change. There's references to Catholic and Protestant, of same-sex relationships, a move from meat eating to vegetarianism, etc. So you're dealing with a number of changes, which some may be challenging for older generations, some may not. So using comedy and using home as a vehicle for talking about change. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's an interesting way to sort of put it in that perspective, you know, using familiarity to talk about unfamiliar things. I like the way you put that together. So in terms of the film and using it as a device almost to talk about things, it's kind of, I'm running two parallels at the same time, sort of two bits of traffic. So you have the lightheartedness as a platform and the comedy and the Irish and the warmth I hope that comes across of the granny setting, sort of, which is Irish and home, to talk about the unfamiliar, especially to the granny, which is being a vegetarian, your sexuality being in question, things like that. So they're kind of used in a way to reference home and reference sort of the innocence, I think, that exists in the north of Ireland, where we're always constantly, in my opinion, seen in the media as contested and conflicted, and the place that nobody still quite understands, and still very unsettled, when in reality on the ground there's a lot more progress done and seen and felt that I think isn't felt or seen anywhere else. I'm still kind of, in a lot of people's minds, stuck in this time, in this era, when in reality, like, mixed marriages, for example, are high and increasing ever so more. Generations are changing, perspectives are changing, sort of, this idea of Catholics and Protestants not talking or getting on, it's just not true anymore. And actually there's a lot of good groundwork being done. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot still to be done, but there's a lot still to be done elsewhere in the world. And I think that shouldn't detract from what is happening and what is felt and the warmness is felt from Irish people. There's this thing that Catholics in the north are only Catholic and they're only Irish. They would never be Northern Irish and they'd never be British or whatever. and same sort of vice versa for Protestants. When in reality, Catholics in the North have more in common with their Protestant neighbour than anyone down south, in my opinion, and vice versa. You know, Protestants, Catholics have more in common with their neighbour than they do with anyone in England or from the rest of the UK. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of dealing with all of this, and where I am talking positively about Catholics, if you like, in this situation is a Catholic family. I don't detract and I don't take down the other communities in the North. That's not the intention. If anything, the intention is to remind people it's happening faster on the ground level. So obviously Saoirse has a Protestant girlfriend. That's, you know, completely intentionally written in there. And the idea is that the granny, you know, even in her Catholic traditional, you know, maybe stereotypically traditional mindset, might not approve of her lesbian granddaughter. That's not the case at all. And if anything, she's more bothered about her diet than her sexuality, which is kind of another level of humour and innocence that is purposely intendedly put there. So it's kind of like you have all these themes and thematics that I want to run in the whole thing to keep it overall lighthearted and humorous. There's obviously a mention sort of briefly to the riots. You know, at Granny, I know when you were growing up, the riots and all, but nowadays, and she gets cut off, that cutting off is almost super intentional in terms of like, you know, I'm proud of my heritage and proud to be Irish. Like, I will speak about the troubles in the way that I need to, and I've done my own research and I know what's happened, but that doesn't let me or stop me from sort of progressing in the modern age that I'm in now and sort of not talking to Protestant people or anything like that. You know, it's kind of like respecting your past, but also moving on and living in the moment. That's kind of purposely put in the script as well. You know, she talks about the riots, but she gets cut off, not in a rude way, but just kind of like, you know, nowadays, you know, things are changing. So I guess I'm rambling on a wee bit, but it's kind of covering all that because I've had all these thoughts. I knew during the research of the film I was learning about Ireland's history, even though I knew a bit, but I got read up because you can't be talking about things if you don't know about them. You know, and it's as much as you read in textbooks as well, it's very personal being a Catholic, I think, in Northern Ireland, and, you know, sort of things that your family members, long, close and far and wide, all went through, and sort of, I wouldn't go as far as to say inherited trauma, personally. Don't know, that's open for debate and discussion, but at the same time, you know, when you're hearing family members talk about the times and what they went through on a ground level, and not listening to media headlines, it sort of changes your perspectives and stuff. So I guess all of that that we discussed fed into this lighthearted, positive portrayal of modern Northern Ireland and not what has been seen or always seen on media headlines. That was kind of...
Well, I find that very pertinent, Cal, to the programme which IndieCork is curating for the Liverpool Irish Festival, which is a selection of short films from Northern Ireland, which we're calling Fresh Voices and New Visions. You express it well when you say that respecting the past, but also looking to the future. And there are a number of films in that programme which would in different ways reflect or echo what you're saying in your short film. So as an outsider, as somebody from down south, very far south in Cork, it is, I find it fascinating, the creative work which is coming out of Ireland by younger creators who are portraying a very interesting vision. And I would commend you and Chloe for the work you did in Hold the Sausage. Could I ask you both, perhaps to start with Chloe, about humour as a vehicle to explore sometimes challenging ideas? Chloe, you seem to relish it because you seem to inhabit each of those characters with a passion.
Yes, definitely. I think we constantly talked about this fine line that I think that we're kind of dealing with throughout the filming of it. And we had a lot of, and then it was hard to not sink into the inside jokes as well. so there was this dialogue between, we want to be going with this symbolism and on the verge of stereotyping, as well as bringing it down to this natural, real life sort of way of living, and have lived and have witnessed and bear witness to. And I just think the importance and definitely the humor for us came out so much in props and little mannerisms. It's where we had like a lot of the fun in terms of like the holding of the chest and the bringing out of these stock things that you just go to your granny's house to find in their cupboards, and it's like, what is this for? And it's been here for years, and still it's that whole thing of the tin with the sewing needles in it, type the tin that you think is biscuits in it, and it's just filled with sewing stuff. I think that's not exclusively Ireland, but that type of token little thing, we had to clock out of it a lot in terms of turning to each other being like, oh well, we say this, and thinking that's hilarious, but when it came to script writing, it was almost too niche or something. I don't know about you, Cal, but there was kind of some times where we had to say, all right, no, like we'll have that. And just there was definitely, it became a lot more structured, I think, in the whole excitement of, okay, we're going to be working on this together and I'm going to be playing all of these characters. It was a lot of hints to, oh, the plate needs to look as spud overload as we possibly can. So that's hinting at the stereotype, as well as giving me something to work with in terms of Saoirse and the mum eating, and yeah, just in the logistical point of view as well. And then there was some times where we kind of said, we've already said about the cross. We couldn't keep on bringing that in because then the humor kind of went away. So we kind of said, what are the main things that we really want to include? We want the rosary beads in there. We want the looks. We want the och now. We want this kind of shaking of the head. And really, Granny, you're really going to talk about this. And we kind of took it down to maybe 10 stock things that we wanted. And I think the massive thing with humor was the Granny. And with time restraint, it was hard to learn the lines and to kind of really embody it. And on the day, I don't think we got the good take until the very last one, where Cal just kind of said, look, you know what, just like do it, just be stupid. And I have footage, whatever we have I can use right now, but let's just do this last take really over the top. So went in humming with like hand on the hip and really big pants on, and like just really like loving it. And I think that was most of the footage that we used was in that take, because we needed to just ham it up in order to meet the naturalism of the rest of them. So that was really interesting. Again, for me, coming from a stage background as well, I don't know my lines, so stop, line, things like that. It was definitely a massive learning curve, transitioning from stage to screen. But again, when I came in to the film was rolling while I was still looking at the air or looking at Cal over there, but that became the Granny in a complete daze or something like that, and we made it work. We made a lot of things definitely work, I think.
Okay, to round up, could I ask each of you, Cal and Chloe, where do you see yourselves going in terms of your art and your production? And the third aspect to that is, Cal, where is the film going? What are your expectations for Hold the Sausage? Is it going to be broadcast? I know that BBC were involved in the production and the funding. Do you see it on TV, or will you explore the festival circuit, etc.? And will it be seen in Northern Ireland?
So I've actually forgot the first half of your question. Oh, the art. Okay. So the art, where we're going, so what's next, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I mean, speaking briefly about it earlier to you guys, but I guess in terms of me moving forward, ideally more directorial positions and sort of that involvement on projects. But in general, I am more interested in projects that sort of, again, engage with representation. sort of ideally in an Irish perspective, but doesn't necessarily need to be there. But essentially, just by amplifying untold stories, untold narratives, sort of maybe that's cross queerness, sexuality, who knows? But ideally, them sort of telling them stories. I think, especially now, I keep talking about modern, but in the modern world that we're moving into and progressing into, with the good and the bad, more people need to be aware of, like, sort of more people around the world and the society we live in need to be aware of others around them, is what I'm trying to say. I think any stories that sort of work to that beat, I'm very engaged in and interested in. I think personally, me and Chloe, we're looking at we're kind of in the development stage of a project that will be about Irish perspectives, but more in a back set of the UK. Now it might take more of a literal tone, and it's kind of looking at how Northern Irish people are, I would say, probably perceived when they go to other parts of the world, perceived how others sort of interpret them. So, oh, you're from Ireland, so you must be Northern Irish, and sort of the labels and what comes with that, and how other people interpret them, calling them names probably that aren't necessarily accurate or true, but it's that person's understanding because of sort of the poor representation that has happened of the North up until this point. So kind of investigating that, I think, from specifically Irish people's perspectives. But yeah, I would say that probably.
And you, Chloe, will you continue acting, or will you pursue your academic career, or both?
Yeah, ideally both. I think going off the art that kind of me and Cal kind of want to go forward with. I just think there's not 5 minutes wasn't enough to sort of get the dialogue out that we kind of wanted to. I think there's just so much still unspoken about. It's such an interesting history, and we don't really need to be harking back, but I think just how we are in the modern present, like I just think in terms of attitudes that are still sort of entrenched, and stereotype is fine sometimes, but sometimes it's really not, in terms of a message that you're authentically trying to portray. I think, I think going in a structure of, I think me and Cal have been so independent for so long and been so English based that we would call Manchester, Liverpool our homes now. So it was interesting at the start of the film in terms of saying, oh, that is home. Like that is definitely an upbringing. But home is constantly changing all the time. And I think this a notion of like heritage and culture is just so important, and we'll always call that home, but it's okay to have a home elsewhere, as well as claiming just as much attachment and ownership of that place wherever you are. I think there's a bit of negative attitude in terms of how you can kind of get diluted wherever you go around the world, and how authentic you kind of claim yourself to be. So definitely there's a dialogue that I think that we would like to keep exploring in terms of representation of being Irish in England, being Northern Irish in England, being from the north of Ireland. I like that it's important to get those terms out there to explore. And I think that intergenerational conversation we hinted at in the film is so interesting. I think as well, obviously yourself from Cork, like we never grew up, we had the option to, but it wasn't as ingrained as it is in the south of Ireland to sort of learn Gaelic, and that's something that me and Cal kind of really had something really interested in, and it would be lovely to sort of like explore that and why, and then getting rid of its prevalence in the modern day, which it kind of is. It's on road signs, and it's definitely in teaching, it's an option. Like why isn't it in general education? So that's a whole different slant as well, where possibly we would love to go in and show a short film or perform and come together even as speakers and artists and creators to kind of say, why is this language not here? Why are the terminologies in terms of how you identify, why are they not sort of in the common language, especially just with the recent census and things like that. Or we find it hard what to tick. So this whole ticking of checkbox as well. in terms of identity and sexual and upbringing. It's definitely, so yeah, there's loads. Sorry, yeah, Cal.
Sorry, I just had one sentence, which is I noticed on the consensus, or a government forum anyway, it's the first time in my life. It was a UK-based government forum, but it said, you usually get Northern Irish, British, Scottish, and all the rest, but the first time in my life it said Irish, and then in brackets, including Northern Ireland, which is the first option ever. I thought, oh great, that's good they've got that now. But it's interesting that I was only privy to that, having read that for the first time. I thought, oh yeah, why wasn't this an option before? So yeah, I think it's just about investigating that sort of Northern Irish perspective across the world. Both the north where we live and then the south is kind of like home, but at times you're told you're not allowed to feel like it's home. It's strange, but investigating.
I think it's in such a secularized time as well. It's funny just how religion it comes into it when it kind of wants to. So we've constantly been said, oh, so you're from Northern Ireland, so you're Protestant. It's like, no. So we've definitely had this conversation of why can't we, it would be really nice to not have to say the north of Ireland, because technically, geographically, that's not a place. You're Northern Ireland or you're on the Isle of Ireland. It's like the north of Ireland is not a place, but that is what people want to identify as being from. So yeah, it's like, why can't we have that ownership of Northern Ireland while also being Catholic? So it's the pinning, why does religion come into it so much when it's kind of not that important unless it's the 12th of July or unless it's St. Patrick's Day? Like, it's strange.
And it also, sorry to add the last line, it almost gives more weight and like almost confirmation of, back in the day when Northern Ireland was being formed. It almost makes you think, like, were these things intentional so that actually more division did happen and separation? Like, let's give this new title just to cause more confusion and isolation almost for certain community members who are already going through enough turmoil of their home sort of being changed. And yeah, a lot of questions, but a lot of things we'd love to explore and look at and understand why, or just, how I come.
Thank you ever so much for that, and sorry to dive in. I'm mindful of your time and people's watching time. I'm also really reminded of a Whitley Russell comment that was something around telling one story really impressively well helps tell lots of stories pretty well, and there's something around the specificity of you speaking about that very particular Northern Irish position that actually chimes very closely with Liverpool's sense of exceptionalism and its sense of being northerly and slightly removed from centres of power or of discourse, of the exchange point. And I think there's something really interesting in what you're doing with that and what you're continuing to play with. And I know Mick has sort of picked up on that in various ways about different families and perspectives on that. I'm really excited to see what the next projects are. I will wrap up in a moment, but what I want to do is just pass to each of you to let the audience know where they can find out more about you. So I'm going to go Mick, then Chloe, then Cal. So Mick, if you would let people know how they can find your work.
Well, I and colleagues, because it's a team, run the IndieCork Film Festival in Cork. So indiecork.com, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, etc. So we've finished our 9th festival, and we look forward to our anniversary festival next autumn, 10 years of IndieCork. Thank you.
Chloe, you now.
Thank you. I'm going to say that Instagram is where you kind of find all of our behind the scenes shots and things that we put up there, and definitely the making of the film is all up there as well. Podcasts and things that I've participated around while being in Liverpool in my time here, links and everything is there. So that's clo.muldoon, MULDOON. That would be my main handle. Yeah.
Cal, how about you?
You can get me on Instagram, probably the best as well. Just my name, cal.freeman. My email as well is calfreeman123@gmail.com. In case you want to invest in the next big project, or we're going to get working on something. Always available, always free. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the talk and I didn't ramble too much.
Not at all. We're really, really glad to have had all three of you in a really exciting and interesting panel for anybody who's making film or thinking about subject matter. For us in Liverpool, Hold the Sausage is an incredibly important film. As you may or may not know, sadly, Liverpool has had a number of homophobic attacks recently. One is too many. The fact that we've had more than one is too many, and so this idea of us helping to celebrate positivity and doing so with fun and with kindness, warmth and generosity feels much more like the city I know and that I love and that I would very much like us to represent. And so your grandma's open-hearted, open view really resonates with what I hope we're going to do in the city. So just to add a little bit more about where Hold the Sausage can be seen, on the cover of this year's magazine, and it's and we have a feature on page 10 which you can see both in print and online, so do look at the feature. It's not Grim Up North on page 10. Hold the Sausage will feature as part of a couple of our film programmes, notably with our IndieCork programme and also with Irish Film London. You can find out more about the festival at liverpoolirishfestival.com, and you can follow us using the handle @liveirishfest on all the major social media channels. So really what I need to do now is just say thank you so much to everyone for participating. It's been wonderful to see you all and hear your excellent chat, and we'll look forward to having many more exchanges with you in future. So thank you ever so much. I applaud you all.